In music, the names for notes can be confusing with all of the letter names, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, along with sharps and flats, and sometimes double sharp and double flat names. It's sort of crazy. And trying to remember how all of these labels apply to the notes on an instrument, like the piano or the guitar fretboard, can be a pain if you don't really understand how these names really work in music. So in this video, I'm going to explain all of the different names for notes and which names to use in different situations, so you can really master the vocabulary and logic of music. Okay, so to begin, in Western music, there are actually only 12 notes that we call the chromatic scale. Every pattern in music, like every scale, mode, chord, etc., all of it, it all stems from these 12 basic notes. And you can repeat these same notes in different octaves, but at its core, music can be distilled down to just these 12 notes, which is nice because 12 is not a big number. That's not bad at all. And it's important to remember when we start adding all of the various note names in music, which can make it seem like there are more than 12 notes in the chromatic scale. It just has to do with what are called enharmonic note names, which are really just synonymous names for the same notes. For example, starting with just the most common names, some of the notes have simple letter names: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. All of the white keys of the chromatic scale, using the black and white pattern of a piano keyboard to illustrate. And the remaining notes, all of the black keys, are labeled by letters with an extra sharp symbol. So the note above or to the right of C is C sharp. The note after D is D sharp. After F is F sharp. Then we have G sharp and A sharp. Each sharp note has the same letter name as the one before it in this pattern, along with a sharp symbol to show that they're all distinct. And in this way, we get 12 notes. Where it can get confusing, though, is that all of the sharp notes have flat names as well. So A sharp, for example, can also be called B flat, and G sharp sometimes goes by the name A flat, etc. And these other names, or enharmonic labels, can make it seem like there are more than 12 notes, but really there are still just 12 fundamental pitches. Some of the names are synonymous, that's all. So this is what's going on with the sharp and flat notes in the chromatic scale. But where it gets a little crazy is when you bring in all of the other enharmonic note names as well, because really every note in music goes by multiple names when you factor in what are called double sharp and double flat note names. Though honestly, it's not that complicated. Natural names, those without any sharps or flats, are at the center in this diagram. Again, these are all of the white notes in the chromatic scale. The ring of labels just outside of that includes all of the sharp names, which include all of the black notes, as well as B sharp, also known as C, and E sharp, aka F. In a minute, we'll look at an example of when you actually use names like B sharp and E sharp, since they're not as common, but looking at all of the possible labels here, the flat notes in this ring, they form a similar ring, which are all black notes, along with C flat, also known as B, and F flat, or E. In this far outer ring, all of these double sharp notes are white. C double sharp, for example, is another name for D, because we went C, C sharp, then C double sharp, or D. Likewise, D double sharp is another name for E, etc. And then finally, the double flats in this inner ring are also white, where E double flat is just another name for D, E, E flat, E double flat, or D. D double flat is another name for C, and so on. So again, the natural names A through G are in this middle ring. Sharp and double sharp labels extend outward, and flat and double flat names reach inward within this single diagram that summarizes all of the possible enharmonic names in music. But the question is, if there are still only 12 basic notes in music, then why do we have all of these different options for labeling the notes? Like, why on earth is this the case? There's actually a reason for this, and it has to do with two simple rules for how to label the notes in a scale. Scales are fundamental to music theory because scales define keys and are the basis of melodies and chords and entire songs. So scales are really important, the most fundamental one being the major scale. And the rules for labeling the notes in a scale are these. 1, the notes in a scale are labeled in alphabetical order. And 2, you cannot have 2 of the same letter in a scale. That's it. Those are the rules. To label the notes in alphabetical order in a scale and not to repeat letter names. And this is what causes the need to have all of these enharmonic names in music. So for example, let's take the C major scale. With its pattern of whole step and half step intervals, all of the notes in the scale happen to be white notes in the underlying chromatic scale, where the black notes here highlight the whole step and half step intervals that are skipped in the C major scale. So the pattern is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. all of the notes with just plain letter names and no sharps or flats. In another video, I explain why the major scale forms this particular pattern, which is basically because it's a rearranged segment of the circle of fifths, another essential pattern in music. But looking at the major scale, the C major scale like this, you can see how each letter name is used only once. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. There are no repeats. Each note here has its own distinct letter name. Likewise, in the G major scale, as another example, the pattern is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, where again, each note has its own letter name. And this note, F sharp, is called F sharp instead of G flat because G is already taken here. So we can't have G, A, B, C, D, E, G flat, G. This note has to be F sharp to follow the rule of not repeating letter names within a scale. This F sharp / G flat note sometimes goes by the name G flat in other keys, which you'll see here in a second. But as another example, another scale, let's take the D major scale of D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. This pattern also follows the rule of not repeating any note because each note gets its own letter. This scale starts on D, and following the pattern of whole step and half step intervals, in alphabetical order, the notes are D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, where this C sharp isn't D flat since the name D is already used, and this F sharp isn't G flat because we move in alphabetical order in this scale, not skipping letters. So the sequence isn't D, E, G flat, G, we need an F in here. And since the pattern is whole step, half step, or D, E, F sharp, G, this note is an F sharp rather than a plain old F. Now, to switch things up, let's say instead that we start on this note, which can be either C sharp or D flat, and we call it D flat. The pattern we get is D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat. Again, each note gets its own letter name in alphabetical order, and none of the letters are repeated. Since we started on D flat, this note, which has the enharmonic names of both D sharp and E flat, goes by the name E flat here because this D flat already has a D in it. So according to the rule, we can't have D flat, D sharp, F. It has to be D flat, E flat, F to give each note its own distinct letter name. And since this note is F, we don't call this one F sharp, it's now G flat. So D flat, E flat, F, G flat, to keep our pattern of distinct letter names for the notes in this scale. So this D flat major scale is D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat. It's not D flat, D sharp, F, F sharp, A flat, A sharp, C, and D flat, or something like that, because we'd be skipping letters and repeating others to just make a scrambled alphabet soup. And the same ideas apply when we start on a sharp note. Like, instead of calling this D flat, we call it C sharp and play the same pattern. The same notes are played, but each goes by a different name to follow the rules of naming notes in alphabetical order and not repeating letters. So the C sharp major scale here is C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, and C sharp. Each letter name is unique, and none of them are repeated in this sequence. Finally, as one last example, let's play the D sharp major scale, and something interesting happens. The pattern we get is D sharp, E sharp, F double sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C double sharp, D sharp. By following the rules, we get some unusual names like E sharp, which is another less common name for plain old F, along with F double sharp, aka G, B sharp or C, and C double sharp, also known as D. In the regular D major scale, we already have two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. So in the D sharp scale, those two notes, which were already sharp, become double sharp to retain the unique letter name for each note, but with some sort of wacky results. And that's why you'll often see other enharmonic names used instead to simplify and reduce the number of accidentals or extra sharp symbols that are used. For example, instead of calling this the D sharp major scale with all of its sharps and double sharps, a cleaner way to label the same pattern is to say that it's the E flat major scale. The E flat note is the enharmonic name for D sharp, and the resulting pattern is a little less crazy because we start with E flat and then the sequence is E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, and E flat. These are the exact same pitches as in the D sharp major scale, but now several of the notes have their regular natural names like F instead of E sharp, G instead of F double sharp, C instead of B sharp, and D instead of C double sharp. This E flat major scale is less of a mouthful than D sharp, and it's easier on the eyes and brain. So to recap, music really only has 12 notes. There are different enharmonic or synonymous note names that are available, and the specific names that you use are based on the sequence of intervals in a scale, and also the rules that the names of notes in a scale go in alphabetical order and should not be repeated. And these principles explain how and why musicians use various note names in different situations. So hopefully this was helpful. Please let the algorithm know if you liked it. These diagrams are in the community, so there's a link in the video notes and you can find all of these diagrams to take them in at your own pace. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.